Thank you, Father Karski, Father Kelly, Reverend Fathers, dear sisters, my brothers, and any honored guests. Growing up in the Archdiocese of Chicago, the only priests I really ever saw and knew were about 55 years old or older or foreign. So they were never really guys who I felt I could ever relate to, never saw myself in their shoes. It wasn't until the first day at the George Washington University in Washington, D.C., I went to Sunday Mass and I met my priest hero, Father Charlie Gallagher. He was the first cool young priest I ever met. He loved the priesthood. He was so orthodox in all of his ways. Here are a few things that stood out to me about Father Charlie that led me to fall in love with the priesthood. First off, he lived a full priestly life with the utmost zeal and love. He was the full-time chaplain at our Newman Center and a pastor and only priest at the fastest growing parish in DC. He made it a point to be at every single one of our Newman events, especially every Tuesday for Tuesday night dinner. He hosted men reading groups every other Friday, and we hung out with him on the rooftop talking about anything, just great discussions, as well as he got us all hooked on cigars and tobacco pipes. It was kind of hilarious. He truly, though, in those times, fostered deep brotherhood at the Newman Center. He also went out of his way to bring me and two other guys who are also in seminary now to have a private viewing of the heart of our very patron, St. John Vianney, when he was in Washington, D.C. at the St. Pope John Paul II Seminary. Another trait that Father Charlie possessed was that he was a courageous priest. He never held back in his homilies. One of his first homilies I ever heard him give was at the Newman Center in front of a whole chapel full of college students, all about chastity. It's the first time I ever heard a priest talk about sexual morality. Another one was the fall of 2018 was right after all the sex scandal stuff came out in 2018. And he had a whole discussion and hosted it himself with all the students wanting to know the truth of what actually happened and what's the current situation. He was never afraid. He also invited guest priests to come talk about transgenderism and the church's place and how we react to this moving progressive culture. Also, being a priest in Washington, D.C., you have very high-profile people in your congregation. For example, Kellyanne Conway was at one of our Sunday Masses, the counselor to the president, but it never fazed him. He was never afraid to speak the truth to what the church taught. And lastly, he is a priest who showed me and every person at the Newman Center the importance of having the sacraments in our lives. He made it a point to have Mass, confession, and adoration every single day at the Newman Center. One of his most memorable homilies for me was all about confession. He shared the life of Saint Damien of Molokai and expressed how no matter all the trials that he went through, Saint Damien, the number one hardship he endured was not being able to make a frequent confession. And lastly, on Parent Weekend, he shared a remarkable homily on how the tabernacle that sat in the chapel at our Newman Center in DC was one of the closest tabernacles to the White House, the closest tabernacle to the State Department, and one of the closest tabernacles to some of the most influential, important NGOs of the world. He made it a point that our Newman Center were being fostered and nurtured by the Eucharist to become the leaders of the world. So as you can see, Father Charlie is a pretty awesome guy. He was an incredible priest who impacted my life tremendously. I will forever be grateful for the example he shared with me It is truly because of him and the grace of God I was able to see the beauties of the priesthood and fall in love with it. And for that, I say, praise be Jesus Christ.